right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of Dine and Dish. And today's episode is going to be epic. I have such a fun guest on the phone and face to face with me today. And I'm going to get her introduced because there's nobody more fabulous than her. And she can tell you about her amazing experience this week working and walking in Swim Week. So with further ado, Maria, hello.
Hello, Michele. I'm so excited to be here with you. I am coming to you from Las Vegas. And of course, Maria the Wine Blonde always has wine.
Okay, well, I have to say, when you first logged on, I was like, okay, this is so not fair. I need my wine. So wait, I have bottles, but they're not open.
Crack those babies open, girl.
I know. So before we get started, you have to introduce yourself and talk about your amazing week. I saw your Instagram and I saw what you're up to, and I'm going to give the mic over to you for a couple minutes.
I am still recovering. It was such a busy week. So the last 2 weeks were actually Las Vegas Swim Week. My in-laws decided to come in that weekend of the first week, so I wasn't able to participate. They pulled a last minute, let's go see Maria and Eric. But this last weekend, which was so full anyway, I'm glad I didn't do all 2 weeks, but it was a series of events for Las Vegas Swim Week. We had photo shoots, we had pool mixers, I was judging a bikini contest, walked the runway on Sunday at the Sterling Club, which was an incredible event. And I was supposed to walk for 2 designers, wound up walking for 5. So yeah, my feet were in recovery mode yesterday.
Well, that's exciting. So we have to jump into the show because I know you and I are going to go all over the place and we're going to talk about so many different things and we're going to run out of time. But let's talk about your fabulous job because I have to tell you, I love wine. Wine is my probably favorite pastime. I mean, I actually have my own wine label. I import my own grapes. I own Restaurant Diva Imports in addition to doing the podcast and being a restaurateur. So I love everything you do and I follow you through all of your travels. So talk about, I know, right? Talk about your inspiration, what got you into this, and just the whole culture of wine and travel and what you do on a daily basis.
Yes.
It's a lot,
Sometimes
right?
it is a lot. Sometimes I feel like I'm pulled in a million directions because for me, it is the wine, it is the travel. It is the people that are part of the wine industry that I interact with regularly. And then it's also the fashion world that I'm in, which I've been in for a number of years. But for wine, the way I got into wine was through food. And that just makes sense, right? Because it's such a perfect pairing. And I feel at this point in my life, I can't have one without the other. But my mother was a great cook. She was a fantastic cook. She was Italian, Irish, and Russian Jewish, but she cooked a lot of Italian because my dad was 100% Italian, and she learned a lot from his mother. But she also loved French cooking because she was a huge fan of Julia Child. And I grew up watching episodes of Julia Child with her. So we always had the most amazing dinners and I would help her in the kitchen and we would make all the fancy things. But wine was not the biggest part of our meal. It was the food. And we didn't always have wine at the table. We certainly had it at certain celebrations. We would have Tétranger, we would have Dom Perignon when we were celebrating a holiday. And so right then and there, I knew that champagne was for celebrations. But I wasn't exposed to it on a regular daily basis. It wasn't always part of the dinner table. But as I got older, I remember going on a date. And of course, the wine list is always handed to the man. And I said, "Can I see that?" I looked at this menu and it was like a foreign language. I was looking at it like, how do you even understand this? And I didn't let that intimidate me. I let it become part of my curiosity to go say, I want to find out more about this. I need to learn about this. This is what completes the meal. It slows down time. It helps you connect with the person across from you. The cheers is just so important. I've said before that when you say cheers, you're basically saying, the life within me honors the life within you, or the life within me celebrates the life within you when you make a cheers. And I just found out that it was something that I was able to grasp so easily because I grew up around food, because my nose was already trained. I was in the kitchen with my mother. We had a garden. I was smelling things and cutting things in the kitchen. It's the best way to train your nose. We would go to the markets together, the farmers markets, pick fresh strawberries, cherries, all of that. And that is literally training you to understand the complex aromas in wine. And, you know, I found a wine school. I signed up for classes. I fell so in love with it. I started working for them as I was learning more and more. And then I wound up hosting a show with that wine school on Philly.com, and it was called Philly Uncorked. And we would do wine education in shorter segments, which now seem long because everybody has an attention span of like 30 seconds, right? But those were like 4 to 5 minutes. And we would talk about wine and recommend certain wines. And then I morphed into hosting a restaurant show for Philly.com. That's the Philadelphia Inquirer's website, which I think went back to being called Philadelphia Inquirer. I'm not sure why. Nobody can really spell that. Philly.com was a lot easier. And then I started hosting a cooking show called The Chef's Kitchen on TV. And that was on the Comcast network and syndicated in various other channels.
Yeah.
And
So
working side by
I'm going
side
to
with,
cut you off for,
yes,
yeah,
go
I want
ahead.
to cut you off for 1 second because you brought up so many amazing points. So you talked about food and wine because, you know, it's funny you bring that up because my husband always says, you can't drink wine without food. And there's so many people, like I'm such a wine drinker. The first thing I do when I go to a restaurant or I go out is grab a glass of wine because I'm like, "Ugh, I love wine. So I can drink it without food. But there's so many people that will only drink wine with food because it pairs so well. So I want to table that and I want to talk to you about pairing and food. And then you talked about the wine menu, which is so close and dear to my heart because as soon as we sit down at the table, you're so right. The first thing you do is hand it to the man. And I'm like, I'll take that because hello, I pick the wine at the table. I mean, that's just my thing. Like, I'm like, give me that menu because I love to pick the
Yes,
wines.
go.
But you brought up such a good point because wine can be so intimidating. You look at these menus. I mean, nowadays it used to be 1 or 2 pages. We were in London and we were sitting down at the table and they handed us this book and it had hundreds of pages. So for the average wine drinker that doesn't know how to look at grapes and regions and different varietals, that's so overwhelming and intimidating. So I want to talk through that. And then you talked about just wine tasting and the aromas and the nose. And that's so important as well. So we have so much to cover in the next 30 minutes. So let's talk food and wine. So rewind and talk to me about pairings because that's so important. And, you know, how do you break the myth? Like they say, oh, well, red should only go with meats. White should only go with, fish and chicken. So talk to me about pairings and myths because you don't always have to pair colors with food, right?
I will say that I break rules probably more than most people. And guess what? It works.
Yeah.
I dare people to try a big, juicy, buttery steak with butter on it, like steak with butter. I like butter on my steak. And then have it with a rich, buttery Chardonnay. It will surprise you. It works. If the Chardonnay is rich enough, go with something New World, go with something from Napa. It's going to help bring out the buttery, rich fatness. And, they say obviously the tannins soften when you have it with protein, and white wine doesn't have the tannins that red wine does. But also, it's not always about texture. Sometimes it's about flavor too.
Yeah. So breaking the rules is, look, I'm the same way. Like I'm so non-traditional and it's about having fun, enjoying food, enjoying wine, enjoying the company. So I agree. You don't always have to pair. Like we went out to dinner and we had Italian food and we had red and white on the table. When we go out to steakhouses, we do red and white because not everybody likes red. I mean, I have a niece that, hates certain California wines and only drinks Italian. So breaking the rules is fun when it comes to wine. So let's talk a little bit about, your pairing rules. What are the rules? I mean, what do they typically say? So if you have pasta with red sauce, what do you serve? If you have fish and chicken, what do you serve? So what are traditional rules for people listening that don't really know a lot about wine?
Right. So often the rule is the heavier the dish, then the heavier the wine. That's why people think steak, red wine. Fish, people think, oh, it's light, it's delicate. So it goes with a lighter, delicate white wine. But think about it. You have two other things you really need to dial in first. Is the fish always light? What if it's salmon? What if it's tuna? A red
Good
wine
point.
that's lighter bodied and less tannic is going to work really well. The reason why a big, heavy red wine doesn't work with a delicate fish is that A, it overpowers it, and B, it can make it taste metallic. For an example, scallops with red, heavy Cabernet is going to make the scallops taste fishy. It gives you that metallic flavor, and people will think, oh my gosh, these aren't fresh. It's not the scallops, it's the wine, changing the taste and the flavor. I think the other thing that people really need to consider that they forget is the sauce. And sometimes people order a dish and they're like, oh, it's chicken. I always order chicken. But do you like the sauce? Because if it's in a white wine caper sauce and you don't like capers, you might not like that chicken, right? But you have to pair with the sauce because a buttery sauce might be the better pairing for a white Chardonnay than the Pinot Noir. If you're going for a chicken with a jus where it has that beautiful, rich, meaty gravy, that's going to go better with a red wine like a Pinot Noir. Also great with a Beaujolais in my eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
So
sauce preparation is the key to a good pairing.
interesting. So in terms of wine without intimidation, because you talked about you sat down at that table on the date, and of course there's this big wine list and it comes down in front of you. And what if you don't know anything about wine? Is it best to ask the sommelier at the restaurant, or is it best to wing it and just, throw a dot on the board and say, okay, I want this one? Or, what's the best suggestion that you have in terms of intimidation and wine? I mean, there's so many people out there that want to learn about it that don't even know where to start, So what's your suggestion in terms of how they say swirl the wine and look at the legs and then smell the glass? And I mean, what's, the whole gist behind all that?
My biggest thing for people that I tell them is don't be intimidated, be curious, because that will open up so many more doors for you if you're not intimidated and you're curious. Because I understand the wine list can be overwhelming. That's why most fine dining restaurants have a sommelier on staff, and they're not there to upsell you. They're there to make your meal more magical. They can help guide you depending on what you like, what your price point is, and what you're having for dinner. And they're they're really there to be your friend. And I think sometimes maybe just even the name sommelier gets people like, oh no, I have this handled. I have this handled.
Mhm.
And there's certain ways where you can tell a sommelier what price point you're in without saying it for the whole table to hear. You can literally pick up a wine list and you can point to a number of price, right? One of the wines on the list. Point to one of the prices and say to the som, I'm looking to stay, I'm looking for something like this. And you point to the price. You're not pointing to the wine, you're pointing to the price. And so you're giving the som a tip that I want to be in that price point. If they're good, they're not going to try and double that because that's not not the right thing to do. But if you point to a number, you can kind of signal to them without telling the whole table where you are price-wise. And you can also sometimes ask, is there anything that hasn't been added to the list that you think I might enjoy? I typically prefer a high acid white. I like citrus flavors versus floral, and then they can help guide you. If you give them a little bit of a tip of what you usually drink, and a good sommelier will often say to you, what do you typically gravitate towards? Do you like a bright, fresh, crisp white? Are you into a more earthy, wine with flavors of cherry and raspberry, then I would think Pinot Noir. But that can help guide them to finding you the right wine. And also, they should ask, what are you ordering? What is everybody having at the table? Sauvignon Blanc for a white wine is like the little black dress of wine. It will go with almost everything if you're ordering more fish for a seafood restaurant. And most people absolutely love it. I have people who literally, in a wine tasting, I was doing a wine education class, and they were like, we did Sauvignon Blanc and Chardonnay side by side. And they were like, wait a minute, I like the Sauvignon Blanc so much better. Why do I always order Chardonnay? I said, well, first of all, it does depend on the specific wine, but also, maybe you're just used to saying Chardonnay because they're going to carry it. But if you really dial it in and start tasting, you're like, wow, I like Sauvignon Blanc better, right?
So you brought up price. So let's jump right into that, because that's always a big one when you're sitting at the table and you're looking at wine and everybody starts the whole conversation of, why is this wine priced differently? Or, you see it at one restaurant at this price, another restaurant at a different price. You look at different grapes, different years. So jump into the whole price piece of wine. Does price really matter? Is the more expensive wine better, or can you find a cheaper wine that's just as good as a higher price wine? That's a
I
loaded one.
don't. Yes, that's
Because I know
that's
I
a
love the
big
expensive
question.
wines, but sometimes you can't always, you have to remember your audience too. Because if you're going out with other people, other guests, and they're not big wine drinkers, and now you order a $400 bottle of wine, they're like, oh my, you have to be mindful of your audience as well.
It is so true. And price to me doesn't necessarily equal quality or equal the best wine. It should equal quality. But quality is a scale, quality of what? And I think that some people's expectations can be so high on a wine that's very expensive that sometimes they get disappointed because they have in their mind, it's going to blow me away. It's going to be so freaking fabulous. I'm spending $3,000 on this wine in this restaurant. And then they're like, oh, this doesn't taste that much better than the $200 bottle of wine I had the other day. I think it's tough. I look at restaurant wine lists and I know the price of what the wines are retail and even wholesale. And I'm like, wow, sometimes in Vegas, especially, how are these markups so insane? That's where a lot of the restaurants make their money. But if you think about it, right? Think about a bottle of vodka. You order a vodka soda. They're charging you like $25. That is literally the price of the entire bottle of vodka. So wine
Yeah.
is actually a better
Restaurants do it
deal.
all the time. Restaurants do it
Yeah.
all the time. I mean, I'm a restaurateur. We buy wine, and depending on the price, it could be 4 times, 3 times the cost. They say average is 4 times the cost of the bottle. I mean, look, I'm giving away secrets. Everybody listening, forget that I'm saying this. But it is true. You go to a liquor store, it's only 1.5 the markup in terms of retail. But there's restaurants out there. I mean, we were in, I forget what restaurant we were in London. I mean, Sassicaia is a big, big label. I mean, you know it. It's a big Italian label. And
Super
I mean,
Tuscan.
it's so good. We buy it, and what we sell it for, I mean, I saw it for like $700 and some a bottle, same vintage, whatever, year, same vintage, everything. And we sell it for like $500 a bottle. So I know what the things cost. So I go to these restaurants and I look at the wine list and I'm like, I know what the cost is, and you get spoiled being a restaurateur, especially when you buy everything at cost, so you look at it and you're like, my regular drinking wine might be Camus, but you go to a restaurant and that's $280 a bottle. I pay $48 a bottle, so it's all relative.
Yes, and the better vintages are always going to be priced more because they're rare to find. Vegas is notorious for having higher prices. They know that there's a lot of high rollers, a lot of this stuff
And they
gets
don't care.
comped, and they know people are going to pay it because people are in Vegas and they're like, when in Vegas, let's do it, right?
What stays in Vegas, stays in Vegas. What happens in Vegas, right? Well, it's funny because one of my favorite wines is Ghost Block. I don't know if you're familiar with Ghost Block.
Absolutely, and I've collaborated with them. Their wines are fantastic, and
Oh my
I
God.
started drinking them, I don't know, 16 years ago? I found them. I was like, that's actually one of those wines on a wine list. If you find here, it's a hidden gem. And I look for
Yeah.
those hidden gems. You never want to order the lowest priced bottle or the even the second lowest. That's often even marked up more than the first lowest priced bottle because they know you're going to look
Yeah.
for that one, right? Staying somewhere in the middle is the safe spot. And, obviously, the higher price the wine, often the less it's marked up, but you still have to be willing to spend a lot of money. But yes, tell me how you discovered Ghost Block.
So being in the restaurant business, I do all the wine lists. So I know a lot about wines. I sit down with all the different vendors. I put them all together in terms of making sure that we have the right blends, the right price points. Cause I mean, my biggest pet peeve is when I go to a restaurant and you have $20 bottles and then they jump to $200 bottles. Like there's not the 80, 90, $100 where an average medium range wine should be on the menu, right? So I try to balance out the menus, but I found this wine and I bring this up because this is one of those wines where they only make so much of it. Like when that case is gone, that case is gone. And it's hard to find. And there was a year where I was like addicted to this wine. I'm like, I have to have it. I have to have it. I bought like 6 cases and I went to buy more and they're like, no, we're out. You got to wait till the next vintage. And I was like, no, but that affects price as well because, if it is a limited vintage or it is a limited drop, that affects the price per bottle. So what I started saying is, when I first bought it, I bought it for $40 or $50 a bottle. But then when you start looking for it and you can't find it anymore, or it's a limited edition, you might spend $90 or $100 bottle cost. And that's where the cost to the consumer goes from 120 to 180 in terms of the exact same wine. So sometimes it's not even where you're buying it. It might be the availability of that wine, you know?
Definitely. When there is a vintage where it's a tougher vintage and there's not as much wine that's made, you're going to see the prices sometimes go up. And then also some wineries just have small production. If they're only making 360 cases a year, and they're mostly sold out, you're probably going to see that price point a little bit more elevated.
Yeah. Chateau Montelena was another one like that. That was like another hidden gem that I found, and they are always out of their wine. And then when they find their wine, then they're changing distributors, and then I can't find the person to buy it from. Like, you find these little vineyards and you love them, but then they're hard to buy in a larger number. All right. So forget the wine. Let's talk you because you do so many cool things. And we need to know how you were termed and coined the name the Wine Blonde. So where did that come from? Because it's kind of like Restaurant Diva. Like I have my story of where that came from. So I need to know where the Wine Blonde came from.
The Wine Blonde was created as a little play on perception. There's a few assumptions that people make on how somebody looks, right? And being blonde certainly comes with a few of them. And instead of shying away from that, I actually leaned into it
I love it. I think it's
because,
great.
yes, because
Brilliant.
behind, you know, I'm,
Literally, it's brilliant.
what I just got color yesterday, so it better be.
Well, I
So
can't get color. That's why my hair is up because stupid me decided to get threads. And when you get threads, you can't touch your head. So that's why my hair's up in workout mode because I can't get any color because they can't touch your hair and do all the massage stuff for like 6 weeks.
really? For how long? That 6 weeks?
Like six to 8 weeks. They're not supposed to. And now I'm afraid because it was sensitive and I'm like, oh my, all right, see, I'm digressing. Here we go. This happens every show and I get on a tangent and now we're talking about threads and hair color instead of wine and wine blonde. So go back to your story. Forget my threads.
Okay. So, I feel like I've been in that room where I've been judged. Oh, she's kind of an attractive girl with blonde hair. I don't want to say that people look at me and are like, oh, she's probably dumb. That would be so stereotypical. But again, I think it comes with some certain assumptions sometimes or perception, you know, because behind the blonde hair, I have the credentials and I've done the work in the studies. I feel like I've built real expertise. So, I earned the WSET diploma in 2014. Then I went on to do the certified sommelier because my father-in-law kept calling me a sommelier. I was like, no, 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 Pop, I have a diploma in wine and spirits. It's different. And then I thought to myself, wait a minute, I could do that test. That's going to be easier than what I did with the diploma. So let's just go for it. So, I decided to do the certified with the Court of Masters as well. But I've done a lot of the work in the studies, so it does surprise people when they're in a room with me and I start talking about wine and experiences. And I've been to a lot of regions and vineyards, and that's where the real education happens, I swear. There's a lot you can learn from a book, but it's so different when you're in the geography, the region, understanding and feeling the climate and meeting the winemakers. It's just so different. But I think it throws people for a loop. And that's why Maria the Wine Blonde represents me. And I've always been a little sassy. So my tagline is full glass, high class, lots of sass, and certainly never any apologies for it.
I love that. Love that. Well, being the restaurant diva, I'm on board. So, bring it on.
Yes. And I love that. I
The
always
bigger,
say
the
never.
better.
Yes, I always say, never let someone's perception of you determine your potential. Never.
Yeah. Well, you brought up a great segue right into the stories behind the bottle because I want to get into regions of wine and winemaking. And I want to hear your favorite vineyard, your favorite trip, some of the winemakers you've worked with or collabed with, because, a lot of people don't really realize what it's like to go to these vineyards. I mean, it's especially Italian vineyards versus California vineyards. They're all so different and the experiences are so different. Like one of my favorite vineyards, that we toured, actually I have two. I have one in Italy and one in California, but the one in California was Cade. I don't know if you've been to Cade. It's in
Oh,
the mountain. It's
Jade is
beautiful. Cade
beautiful. The
and
view from up
Quintessa.
there.
The two were my favorite.
Yes.
Quintessa was unreal. But I want to hear about your story in terms of like collabs with winemakers, if you've done any of your own wine labels, and kind of let's talk winemaking.
Yes. So I've never made my own wine label. I love the idea
Is
of
it
it.
coming? How cool would that be?
I
Maria
think
the
it would
Wine
be
Blonde
really
and do
cool.
like a label? I think it'd be super cool. It's like
I don't
Skinny
think I'd
Girl.
call it that. I don't know. I'd have to come up with some sort of sassier name, I think.
Why
But I
Skinny
love that
Girl work?
idea.
Look, I mean, she created a whole line off of that.
That is true. That I think about that often. I'm like, how did she do that? Like, wow, insane marketing. It all comes down to marketing. I
Yeah,
swear.
it does.
I swear. I mean, even on Instagram, it literally all comes down to marketing and how you market yourself. And, that's a synergy that they have along with wines. Um, you know, I've traveled to vineyards all over the world, and there's still some on my bucket list. I mean, that's how many there are, right?
Yeah.
My biggest fear is I'm gonna die before I get to see every wine region in the world. So
Actually,
I'm kind of
that's a cool bucket list, though. I mean, so many people have like bucket lists of they want to just travel here and do a bridge, do that. Can you imagine checking off all the different? I'm on board. I would do it. Drink my way through Europe. Drink my way through California. Drink my way through. That's great. I mean, what a better way to do it? Wine brings, like you said, it's the truth serum. It's the cheers. It's the heart. It's the family. It's tradition. I mean, it brings so many great things together. It's fun. I love it.
and I think there's wine regions that people don't even know about. I just got back from Albania, and they're making wine in Albania. That how many people have tried an Albanian wine? Probably very, very, very few. Even for me, that was my first time trying an Albanian wine. We went to a winery called Abaya. It was so beautiful, the setting, and then their restaurant. This Bistecca Fiorentina that we had, that they brought out on a
I
cart
can
and then
imagine.
finished it on a hot pan with butter, paired with their wines. I will tell you, this was such a mind-blowing experience. I can't wait to go back, and I'm going to do a reel on that and definitely showcase how magical this place was. But I've been to Spain. Of course, I've been to Napa. Been to wine regions in France. There's still some big bucket list regions. I have not been to Champagne and I have not been to Burgundy, and I need to make that happen.
Wow. Okay. You need to. because it was fabulous. We did that a couple of years ago, and France is just, some of the vineyards out there were just tremendous. Tremendous.
Yes. I mean, I'm going back to Spain this September. So every year since this will be the third. So they started their first 2 years ago. This will be the third year. This group in Spain called Vino Influencers created an awards gala that honors people in the wine content creation industry. So it's literally called the Vino Influencers Awards because it's the World Awards for wine influencers. The last 2 years, I was nominated in the wine education innovation category. And, that could change this year. I hope I get nominated. I hope to win. But even being nominated, I felt
That's
like a winner
exciting.
because only 5 people per category are nominated and there's only 10 categories. So that was pretty
Wow,
special. I'm
that's
excited to go
exciting.
back this year. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And it's great because leading up to the gala, we also do some wine tours. So we get to see the region of Rueda and Ribera del Duero and visit some of the wineries there who've been tremendous at hosting us and also sponsoring the event.
Very cool. All right. So let's talk what's hot and what's not, because we're going to run out of time and we got to talk
Yes.
wine trends. So what are you seeing now in terms of your traveling? So Vegas, you're going to Spain, you were in Albania. So let's talk what's hot in wine and what's not. Tell me some
Yeah.
trends. What's new
A
and
region,
exciting?
right. So a region I was just in recently with Merriam and Company is Lodi, California. I think we're going to see a lot more wines coming on premise and, in restaurants. I think we're going to see more Lodi wines and I think people are going to gravitate towards them. I mean, there's a lot of Napa wines that actually use some Lodi fruit on the down low, right?
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure.
But Lodi is such a fascinating place. I really enjoyed visiting this region. It's all about community. And that's really the way wine should be. It's not just this winemaker against that winemaker and their brand against another person's brand that's in the same region. It's about them collaborating. How do we uplift this region together? How do we create this community? What does the future of Lodi look like? Having these roundtable discussions with these wineries, the winemakers, the owners, was just so fascinating to me. It really blew my mind, and I felt like I understood the struggles they're facing because right now wine drinking is down. There's just so many
Well, you know
alternatives. It's
why?
so
Because
hard.
everybody's eating gummies. They don't care about wine. Well, it's true. Okay, listen. The average person, I mean, and you know this, I don't have to tell you, everybody's on a GLP-1, everybody's on a peptide, everybody's on Retta, everybody's on something. So the problem is
Not me.
that stops, you don't need it. I was actually going to say, between what you eat, your travel, and what you drink, how do you stay in the shape that you do to be able to be in a bikini contest? I'm sure everybody listening that watches your Instagram goes, wait a minute, what the heck?
Wait, I was not in the bikini contest. I was a judge. It was very funny. I was going around. I was hyping the girls. I was like, yes, girls, can't wait. So excited. They're like, good luck. I'm like, no. I'll be on stage, but I'm judging. I'm not in it.
And then they see you walk and they're like, oh shit. That's the judge. We're in trouble.
Yes. That was an eye opener for them. Some of the girls were like, oh my God, I thought you were competing. And I was like, oh my gosh, she's judging me.
They probably said, thank God, sit down and judge.
All the girls were, I'm dying right now. All the girls were so amazing. Like literally, everybody was, sometimes you get this catty girl thing happening. It happens in the wine industry. It happens in the fashion industry. But I will tell you, I have not found it that often in Vegas. More, I'd say 99% of the women here are just freaking fabulous women. And they support each other and uplift each other. And that's what I love. That's why I love going to wine regions where they're all about community and uplifting that region, right? Staying fit for me, I do indulge in food, but it's real food. I'm going to say the only time I really eat pasta and pizza because I'm allergic to gluten is in Italy, because there it agrees with me, here it
Well,
doesn't.
and they use the 00 flour, so it doesn't have as heavy gluten, because I can't eat it. I can't. And it's funny because every time I go to Italy, I lose weight because I don't eat pasta and pizza. I don't eat a lot of starches, and because I'm really sensitive, a really sensitive stomach, and I'm married to an Italian, and that's all he eats. Like, we go, and his family's in Italy, and we spend a whole month in Italy every summer, and everybody always says, how do you go and not eat the food? And I'm like, and then we go to Naples. His family lives in a small
Gaetano?
town, Monte Procida, which is, near Naples, across from Ischia, and everything's seafood. And I don't eat seafood either. So I'm like, Italy's like I know Italy's like a double whammy for me. But all right, back to my comment. So everybody's on GLP-1. So the problem is, with everybody watching what they eat, they don't drink, they watch their sugars. Big wines have a lot of calories. I mean, even, very good friends of mine that have big jobs with the distributors like Southern and a lot of these big distributors, they're getting laid off. Different divisions are closing because so many people are doing edibles and gummies because they wake up the next day and they don't have hangovers. They don't have issues and headaches with tannins, and because there are different allergies and different sensitivities that come with wine drinking. And it definitely has affected the wine industry, which is so sad because, wine is, I love it, but it is struggling a little bit. And I feel bad for a lot of these vineyards because sales are down. That's a very good point that you brought up.
People are selling off vineyards in some locations. I
It's
even
sad.
saw that in Lodi. Some of them are pulling up their vines. They're planting olive trees because olive oil is
Yeah.
really big and probably more reliable. But we've also seen this cyclical thing where, people pulled out the olive trees and put in the wine vine. So, I think it could be cyclical. However, right now it is tough because there's certainly more choices, especially with the RTDs, the ready to drink cocktails and spritzers, like all these little seltzers that people are drinking, right? But the truth is are they layered and complex? Do they pair well with food? I think the younger generations don't really understand wine enough. And that's why I think it is important for some of the influencers, even if they're not educated as far as done major studies, but if they love wine and they're telling other people to love wine, I'm all on board for that, right? Because if they're able to speak to a younger generation and get them on board, then I think it's fantastic. I It breaks my heart to see what's happening with the wine industry right now. And I do think a lot of the wineries not sure what to do. Do I market more? Do I hire more influencers? Do I try to reach another audience? I think things are going to continue to go up and down and change and so forth in the next, couple years. We'll see where it goes. People rip out vineyards now and plant olive oil trees, and then 10 years from now, it could go back the other way. I don't know, but there is so many
Well, it's a
choices. And
bummer.
that's the hard part.
I know. All right. Well, before we go, I always do my lightning round questions, and I need to know your take on them. All right. I need to know how you feel about screw caps, because that's a very controversial one.
Love
Screw
them.
cap or no screw cap?
Love them. Screw cap right here.
What are you drinking?
This is
Summer in a
Lover
bottle?
Estate. Yep. Summer in the bottle, but it's
Summer in
their
a
Cote de
bottle.
Provence one. They make two. They make one that's from
Yeah.
Long Island, right? And then they also make the one from Provence in France. But screw cap, by the way, how beautiful is that bottle, right?
Yeah.
I have a
I know.
girlfriend who makes candles. I'm going to have her cut it here and pour it with wax. It's going to be the most beautiful candle ever. But no,
Yeah.
I'm big on screw caps. I think it's a great way to enclose a wine. I do love the ceremony of opening a cork, of course, and it does look better in a restaurant. But for wines that are meant to be consumed by the pool, a light lunch, whatever it is, it's just such a great way because you don't have to worry about the cork taint, which can happen, and it happens less nowadays with the cork taint. It used to be more. I feel like 3%. I feel like maybe it's 1% now. They've figured it out more, but screw caps are just a safeguard against all of that. And it's not cheaper. It's actually pretty expensive to do this and invest in this solvent enclosure. It's not cheap.
Yeah. I'll tell you what. when they first came out, I was like, oh no, because I was such a cork fan. But I have to tell you, the only thing nice about screw caps, so I'm a big Corvin fan because, if I'm only going to have a glass or two glasses, you don't want to open a really good bottle of red and then have it go bad. So, I'm a Corvin fan, but when you have a screw cap, it's easy because you could open it, have a drink, close it, and it seals the bottle and you don't have to spend time with the Corvin. Actually, my husband keeps breaking the needles and then it's a mess. Well, you'll love the story. All right, here we go. 2 seconds off topic. So I'm sitting home and, when COVID hit, we had a restaurant in Florida and we had wound up closing it and moving it to Annapolis and we opened here. So we had so much wine. We had this beautiful wine cellar and we loaded everything in the truck and we brought it all here. And a lot of those wines made it into my wine cellar at the house. So I'm sitting on the couch. It's like a winter night. And I was like, this is a really pretty bottle. I'm trying to think of the name of it now, but I pull up the bottle. I mean, it was beautiful. I never heard of it. It was a beautiful painted bottle. And I was like, I poured it in the glass. I start sipping. I'm like, this is really good. And then I was like, okay, maybe I'll have another glass. And the next night, another glass. So I take a picture of the bottle. I send it to Steve. I'm like, Steve, this is really good wine. You have to get me a case. So he texts me back. He's like, and actually he's probably laughing as he's listening to this. And, he texts me back. He's like, I think that bottle's like north of $900. And I'm like, $900 a case? He's like, no, I think our cost is $900 a bottle. I was like, I'm like, $900 a bottle? Okay, wait. It was a $1,300 bottle of wine cost. And I drank it myself over 3 nights. It was the best wine I've ever drank. That was our cost. It was like a $2,200 bottle of wine. So I text my husband. I'm like, you're never going to believe what I just drank. And he's like, you didn't even save me a glass. I'll have to text you when I get off. Steve might remember. I can't remember. I was like, it was probably one of the best wines. The bottle was beautiful. It was like paint. I just loved the bottle. That's why I opened it. I never thought it was a 2,200. I'm telling you, I have crazy wine stories. But anyway.
Was it a Chateau Mouton Rothschild?
No.
With like all the fancy painting?
No, wait till I'm going to text you a picture when we get off the, okay. Actually, Steve might even be texting you already because he pulls everything up faster than anybody. But, all right, red or white? What's your favorite? Or pink?
Do I have to choose? Everything. Red, white, pink, orange. You know what? It depends on the meal.
All of them.
It depends on the reason, the season. It depends on who's buying. Hello. Like what I'm picking. All of that. Yes. But, sometimes it depends on the weather too. I mean, think about it. In Vegas right now, it's been hot and we're finally getting a little cooler temperatures. But I'm like, okay, white rosé right now, champagne. Yes, actually, tonight I'm going to a rosé tasting at Zero Bond at the Wynn. I'm super excited on that.
Oh, so fun.
Yeah. I'm a member there and they do some really, really cool events. So I'm curious to see which wine brands they're pouring tonight for the 6 different wines that we're tasting.
Okay, well, we're so over our allotted time for the show. I could sit and talk to you for hours. So we need to do this again, but we're going to do it face to face because I want to have a glass in my hands. It's not fair to watch you drink and I'm like, okay, I could drink my bottle because, of course, I'm in my office and I have bottles, but I have no glass. How is that? I have no glasses, but I have bottles. But
told you, girl, you need to redo your office.
I need to rebrand this office.
Shelf back there with some fancy Riedel glasses and, display your wines behind you because you have your own wine label. You need all of that. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to rebrand my office and you need your own wine label.
Think about it. Yeah.
Well, for everybody listening, that's another episode. We always run out of time. I have the best guest. And Maria, for everybody listening, where can they find you? I know Instagram, but if somebody wants to reach out and do a collab with you or get any more information, what's the best place to find you?
Yeah, so obviously Instagram, Maria the Wine Blonde is my handle. And then email is very similar. So mariathewineblonde@gmail.com. I am in the process of finally creating a website. So that will be mariathewineblonde.com. That should be up and running in, I don't know, give me another 3 weeks. It's like 85% there, but mariathewineblonde.com is coming. And I'm super excited for that because I do collaborations with wine brands. I do collaborations with hotels and wineries in the travel space. I do podcasts as guests. I do
Yay!
runway. I do, all that modeling stuff too. And then I also do public speaking and wine education. And I do have a book too that I co-authored called Slaying Vegas, where I tell a little bit more about my story of being a little bit more vulnerable and what it takes to not let the difficulties in your life define you, but refine you.
Exciting. Well, you were such a great guest. This was such a fun show. I knew we were going to run out of time. I knew it, but that's okay. You're coming back and we're going to do it live in one of your cities. Maybe we'll meet in a vineyard in the next upcoming months. You never know.
I'd love that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Michele.
I know. For everybody listening, that's another episode. You know where to find me. Of course, restaurantdiva.com. You can find Dine and Dish on Instagram or Restaurant Diva on Instagram. And as always, another amazing show. And Maria, it's always a pleasure. And I loved having you on, and I loved having your sister on. And we all need to get together and have a girls' drinking wine trip.
Yeah. Girls' wine trip. I'm all in. I'll plan the whole thing. Cheers.
Cheers. And that's another episode, and we'll be back next week. Ciao.